Yo, what's up, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back in the video day into the Houston Texans lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars 17-10. And I've been lots of words with this performance today. I look at the first two games that we saw from this Houston Texans team and the performance they put up in both of those games that we saw. And I look at it in this way of the fact that those were two really hard NFC teams that the Houston Texans played. But then I look at this performance today, I can't find any excuses for it. It's just really tough. And I feel bad for the defense because the defense went out there and I felt like they played a great game. They they got up their first interception of the season. They, again, held their opponent to not going over 20 points. And now you've seen this Texans defense so far through 3 games. They have only allowed a total of, 51 points through 3 games. So we are seeing this defense right now through this point allowing less than 17 points per game so far, or exactly 17 points per game so far through 3 games, but have 0 wins. And that is very frustrating. I think, I don't know if I would call this the best game from the offense so far. This definitely wasn't the worst because I thought this performance that the offense had today was probably better than week 1. But if the Texans probably played the way they did offensively last week against Tampa in this game, they probably win this game. And I think there are a lot of frustrating things we can go back on. The missed field goal by Farrenbairn, Stroud throwing an interception, not the interception late in the game, but I'm talking about the interception that Stroud threw earlier in the game to Jordan Lewis. Funny enough, that's my name, just different spelling. Lewis is spelled the same way, but my spelling is the normal. His is like Jourdan, and mine's Jordan. But so yeah, basically, me with a different spelling gets an interception off of C.J. Stroud as the Texans were driving down the field. That's really frustrating. That could have been, that could have turned into a field goal. And if Farrenbairn makes the field goal early in the game when the Texans were trying to go up 3-0, then late in the game, all the Texans need is a field goal. But it's not just like the fact that Stroud threw an interception late in the game down the field, or the missed field goal by Farrenbairn. I think the most frustrating part of this ball game was the the fumble by Nico Collins. It was a great punch out by Tyson Campbell, but the Texans were past the 20-yard line off that catch by Nico Collins, and Campbell pops it out. I feel like that was the momentum breaker for the Texans. There was a momentum starter for the Houston Texans when Trevor Lawrence threw a pick to Jalen Petrie. Then we saw, after that pick by Jalen Petrie, C.J. Stroud on the first play of the next drive throw a 50-yard touchdown pass to Nico Collins, and all of a sudden the Texans were right back in the ball game. I think the Texans, had this huge momentum switch, and it continued to grow after that pick and that touchdown, because then the Texans go out there and stop the Jags on a 4th and 2. But that's where it ends, because the Texans drive down the field after that 4th down stop, and the Nico Collins fumble happens. The Jags, I feel like after that, the Texans lost all momentum. The Jags drove down the field. The Texans basically let Travis Etienne score at the end, and I thought the Texans made some solid plays to get down the field after that. Like Christian Kirk had a nice catch. There were some nice plays that I think the Texans made to get down the field, but a horrible play call at the end that C.J. Stroud gets picked off for the second time in the ball game. I think it's very frustrating. It's like 3rd and 1 on this play where C.J. Stroud throws the pick. You've got your running back on the right side for an easy first down with about 20 seconds left. The Texans would have got to the point where they would have been 20 yards away with 20 seconds left. I don't know what, and this is not, I don't think it's all C.J. Stroud's fault. This is also, Nick Caley, offensive coordinator's fault. Is like, why is C.J. Stroud dropping back on 3rd and 1 to take a deep shot when you only have one timeout left and there's still 25 seconds left? There was 27 seconds left, and you've got a running back wide open. I can't remember who it was, Trevor Woody Marks. I think it was Woody Marks, wide open on the right side. Could have at least got, I think at least got 5 yards, maybe got Could have got 7 or 8 yards on the play potentially, or at the most 10, which would have got the Texans in the range of the 20-yard line. And if that play's made, then you still have one timeout, about 20 seconds left, and 20 yards to go. And so I don't know why that play call is being designed by Nick Caley in that situation of 3rd and 1, and it's 3rd and 1, 27 seconds left, one timeout, you're going down the field. I mean, you want a big play, but I thought on 3rd and 1, you go for the first down first, then you take the check down. But on 3rd and 1, I just don't like that play call. And I thought there was a lot of bad play calling by Nick Caley. It's just not there right now for this Texans offense at all. I thought C.J. Stroud at times today looked in more of a rhythm than we have in the first 2 games, and that's the, I think, only promising thing of this game for the Texans is that I thought there were times where he looked like he was in a rhythm, and I think maybe you could have said that this was one of the best performances we've seen in the 3 games from him, and that's disappointing. And I think I say that because of this was the best game we saw from him and Nico Collins having a connection in this one, and then I also was really impressed what I saw from some of the other wide receivers in this game. I thought Christian Kirk had an excellent Texans debut. Dalton Schultz had a good game. So, but yeah, let's go to the scoring summary. The Jags scored first off of a 2-10 1-yard touchdown run. That's the rookie's first touchdown. I could be wrong. I want to say that might not be his first touchdown, but first touchdown against the Texans, 7-0. Then Farrenbaum with 27-yard field goal, make it 7-3. That was it for the scoring in the half. Cam Little with a 39-yard field goal makes it 10-3. And C.J. Stroud throws a 50-yard touchdown pass to Nico Collins. The Texans let Travis Etienne score on a 10-yard touchdown run, and that was the smart move because the Jags were just going to run the clock out. And so, that's it for the scoring summary. We can go over game leaders and some of the other stats for the Texans in this game. C.J. Stroud threw 204 passing yards. It's his high on the year of passing yards. 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Surprisingly, only sacked twice today, but there was a lot more pressure. And here's what I will say, and I think this is a positive thing you could look into going into week 4, even though you're 0-3, there's not a lot to look forward to. I thought this offensive line looked a lot better in the first half. In the second half than they did in the first half. I thought the first half they were just absolutely god-awful, but in the second half I thought the offensive line held their ground. And I know it's a loss, but you've got to look at some of the positives, and that was one positive, is that the offensive line really held their ground in the second half. All right, run game still doesn't really have much at this point. C.J. Stroud had 22 rushing yards. Woody Marks had 27. Nick Chubb had 38 or 9 carries. It wasn't terrible, but it's just not great. I think this run game right now is really missing Joe Mixon. I really think the Texans are either 2-1 or 3-0 if they had Joe Mixon, and that's what they're really missing right now. They would have won either all or 2 of the last 3 games if they had Joe Mixon, I believe. But Trevor Lawrence threw 222 passing yards. Travis Etienne had 56 rushing yards for the Jags. Nico Collins had 104 receiving yards. We saw Dalton Schultz have 5 receptions for 39 receiving yards. Christian Kirk had 3 receptions for 25 receiving yards in his debut for the Texans. Xavier Hutchinson with 3 receptions and 16 receiving yards. Woody Marks 1 reception for 9 receiving yards. That was on the last drive. Jaden Higgins 1 reception for 5 receiving yards. Jalen Knoll had 1 reception for 4 receiving yards. The only fumble for the Texans was lost by Nico Collins. It was recovered by Devin Lloyd. Tyson Campbell was the one that popped it out. Texans leader in tackles was Azeez Al-Shaair in this game. Funny to see him as a leader in tackles for the Texans, with everything that happened in Jacksonville last year. 2 sacks for the Texans, a half a split sack for Foley Fotokasi and Dylan Horton, and then 1 sack for William Anderson Jr., 3 tackles for loss, of course. You've got the 1 for Will Anderson Jr., you've got 1 for Tremont Smith, and 1 for Tim Settle Jr., The only interception of this game for the Texans was Jalen Petrie. That's the first interception of the year for the Texans. Jordan Lewis, not me, had an interception return for 6 yards. Antonio Johnson had an interception at the end of the game as well. Also, really bad for the Texans, C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Derek Stingley Jr. both left this game and were hurt in this game, so it's not good. Things are just not good for right now for the Texans. I don't think you see the same vibe for this Houston Texans team. I could be wrong. I just don't see the same vibe for this Houston Texans team as I did from the Texans in 2018 when they were 0-3. This is a lot different. But you know what? I could be wrong because, look, very similar to the 2018 team, the 2018 team in those first 3 weeks had a lot of close losses, just like this year's 2025 team has had a lot of close losses. The Texans had like a 7-point loss against the Patriots in week 1. Then against the Titans, I want to say it was a 3-point loss. And then I can't remember what the final score against the Giants was in that week 3 game again for the Texans. But they had a very close loss in that one as well. So at this point, the Texans have had 3 close losses by 7 points, 1 point, and 5 points. So, I mean, you've only lost by combined 13 points over 3 games. It's been 3 very close games where I think the Texans have been in it at the end of all of these games, but luck has not been their way so far, and offensive issues have struggled for this Texans team as well. So I wouldn't rule out the season for this Texans team, but it's not looking good at all. But I think the Texans should have a fairly easy matchup to improve to 1-3 next week against the Titans. But this is where things get hard because after that, you've got the Ravens. So as much as I'm confident the Texans should get on the win column for the first time next week against Tennessee at home and go to 1-3, not very confident in the Texans winning their next 2 games. So I think you're entering the bye 1-4. That is not a good place to be in. So right now, I see this Texans team going 1-4, entering the bye. Then you've got Seattle, then you've got San Fran, Denver, and Jacksonville after the bye. So I think let's determine where this team is at after the bye and going into these next 2 games against Tennessee and Baltimore. But I'd imagine it's probably going to be 1-4, and I don't think this team is to be. I don't think this team is so bad to be 0-5 going to the bye. I think most likely it's going to be 1-4 for this team going to the bye unless they can pull off a shocker in Baltimore. You guys let me know your thoughts on the loss for the Texans in the comment section, and peace out.